Alright, let's explore. Number 8. The seeds that shouldn't exist. In 2009, archaeobotanist Julio Mercader published findings from Ngalue Cave in Mozambique that quietly unsettled the established timeline of human behavior. His team had recovered stone tools coated in starch residue. The tools dated to approximately 105,000 years ago. That number matters enormously because what those tools were doing challenges everything we thought we knew about when humans first began deliberately processing and selecting plants. The accepted model of human prehistory places the origins of agriculture firmly in the Fertile Crescent, around 10,000 to 12,000 BCE. That is the story told in every textbook, repeated in every documentary. Humans were hunter-gatherers until roughly that point, and then something clicked, and civilization began. The model is tidy. It is also, increasingly, incomplete. The Ngalue tools showed systematic, repeated contact with multiple plant species, including wild sorghum. This wasn't accidental. The pattern of residue suggested deliberate, organized plant processing at a scale that resembles proto-agricultural behavior, performed by people living nearly 100,000 years before the Fertile Crescent farmers supposedly invented the concept. Researcher Anna Revedin of the Italian Institute of Prehistory found similar evidence at Bilancino in Italy, where starch processing tools dated to approximately 30,000 years ago were recovered in 2010. Anatomically modern humans have existed for at least 315,000 years, with brains biologically identical to ours. The standard explanation for the long gap between our emergence and our first cities is that cognitive complexity developed slowly. But evidence like this keeps pushing deliberate, organized human behavior further and further back into the deep past. If humans were systematically processing and selecting plants 105,000 years ago, the question isn't whether our timeline is wrong. The question is how wrong it actually is. Number 7. The people we carry inside us. In 2008, archaeologists excavating Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia recovered a fragment of finger bone so small it fit comfortably inside a matchbox. It belonged to a child. The bone was ancient, found in sediment layers deep within the cave, and when researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology sequenced its DNA in 2010, the result was extraordinary. The fragment did not belong to a Neanderthal. It did not belong to a modern human. It belonged to an entirely unknown species of human being that had never appeared in any fossil record. They were called Denisovans, named for the cave where that first fragment was found. The discovery, published in Nature by a team led by Dr. Svante Pabo, was remarkable enough on its own. A new branch of the human family, identified entirely from ancient DNA rather than from bones or tools or artwork. But the finding that truly unsettled researchers came next. Denisovan DNA is present in the genomes of living people today. Melanesian populations, Aboriginal Australians, and some Southeast Asian groups carry between 3 and 5% Denisovan ancestry. These were not a dead end. They interbred with the ancestors of people alive right now. More striking still, a Denisovan jaw discovered in 1980 in Tibet, the Siahi mandible, and formally analyzed in 2019, revealed that Denisovans had adapted to survive at extreme high altitude. The EPAS1 gene variant that allows Tibetans to thrive with reduced oxygen levels has been traced directly to Denisovan inheritance. A species leaving fewer than a dozen physical fragments has nonetheless permanently rewritten the biology of millions of living humans. We carry pieces of the Denisovans in our bodies right now, and we still have almost no idea who they were. Number 6. The temple that broke the timeline. In 1994, a Kurdish shepherd noticed an unusual stone protruding from a hillside near Şanlıurfa in southeastern Turkey. The following year, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute began excavating the site. What emerged from the earth over the following decade forced a complete reassessment of one of archaeology's most foundational assumptions. Göbekli Tepe, as the site came to be known, contained a vast ceremonial complex of T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing 6 meters tall and weighing up to 20 metric tons, elaborately carved with animals and abstract symbols. Radiocarbon dating placed the oldest construction layers at approximately 9,600 BCE, making it around 11,600 years old. That date is the problem. Stonehenge would not be built for another 6,000 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza was still 7,000 years in the future. The conventional model of archaeology held at the time of the discovery that monumental construction required settled, agricultural societies with food surplus, centralized labor organization, and accumulated engineering knowledge. Göbekli Tepe predates all of that. The people who built it were classified as nomadic hunter-gatherers. They had no cities, no written language, and no agriculture in the accepted sense. Yet they quarried, transported, and erected 20-ton limestone pillars with sufficient precision that the structures still stand today. The site covers at least 22 acres, with excavations revealing at least 20 circular enclosures, and researchers estimate that less than 5% of the site has been uncovered. Even more perplexing, Göbekli Tepe was deliberately and completely buried, intentionally backfilled with rubble sometime around 8000 BCE, as if someone wanted it hidden. Who organized the labor to build this? Who fed the workers? And who made the decision to bury the entire complex? And what were they hiding it from? Number 5. The computer that shouldn't exist. In 1900, Greek sponge divers working off the coast of the island of Antikythera pulled an extraordinary range of artifacts from a Roman-era shipwreck. Among the bronze statues and glassware was a corroded, unremarkable lump of bronze that sat in the Athens National Archaeological Museum for nearly 50 years before anyone understood what they were holding. When physicist Derek J. de Solla Price published his landmark analysis in 1974, followed by the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project's comprehensive X-ray tomography findings from 2006 onward, the true nature of the object became undeniable. It was a fully functional analog computing device, containing at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, capable of predicting solar and lunar eclipses, tracking the ancient Olympic Games cycle, and modeling the movements of at least 5 planets with remarkable accuracy. The mechanism dates to approximately 100 BCE. Nothing about that date is unusual for a Roman shipwreck. Everything about the object itself is deeply, persistently baffling. It bears inscriptions referencing the Metonic cycle, a 235-month astronomical period, the Saros eclipse cycle, and the Kallipic cycle, demonstrating a level of astronomical knowledge and mechanical precision that researchers still find astonishing. The gears are cut to tolerances that would have required specialized tools and a deep tradition of precision metalworking. That tradition is the problem. The next comparable mechanical computing device does not appear anywhere in the historical record until the 14th century CE, a gap of roughly 1,400 years. This is not a device that was ahead of its time by a decade or a generation. It is a device that was ahead of its time by 14 centuries. An invention of this complexity does not emerge from nothing. It requires generations of accumulated craft knowledge, failed prototypes, and incremental refinement. The Antikythera mechanism isn't a curiosity from the ancient world. It is a message from an entire technological tradition that has been completely and utterly lost. Number 4. The event that erased everything. Around 12,800 years ago, something happened to Earth. Global temperatures dropped by as much as 10 degrees Celsius within decades. Across North America, the megafauna that had roamed the continent for millions of years collapsed into extinction within a few centuries. Woolly mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and short-faced bears all vanished from the archaeological record within roughly the same window. The Clovis people, the earliest confirmed human culture in the Americas, disappeared just as abruptly, For decades, scientists called this the Younger Dryas cooling event and debated its cause. In 2007, a team of 26 researchers from 16 institutions published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences with a striking proposal. A cosmic impact or airburst event had triggered the entire catastrophe. The hypothesis, led by researcher Richard Firestone and colleagues, rested on physical evidence found across multiple continents. A thin layer in the geological record, the so-called black mat, contained platinum, iridium, nanodiamonds, magnetic spherules, and high-temperature melt glass, materials associated with cosmic impact events, found in consistent stratigraphic layers across North America, Greenland, and Europe. A 2018 follow-up study in the Journal of Geology, led by Wendy Wolbach, added evidence of simultaneous global wildfires consistent with an atmospheric airburst event. The hypothesis remains contested. Other researchers argue the evidence has alternative explanations, and the scientific debate continues. But here is what is not contested. Something happened 12,800 years ago that was catastrophic enough to end species, erase a human culture, and plunge the planet into a centuries-long cold period. Whatever that event was, it would have destroyed any sophisticated human settlement in its path with equal efficiency. If a civilization existed before 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas wouldn't have ended their story. It would have erased the page entirely. Number 3. The map that knew too much. In 1929, German theologian Gustav Adolf Deismann was cataloging documents in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul when he found a parchment map drawn on gazelle skin, folded and forgotten for 4 centuries. It had been created in 1513 CE by Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral and accomplished cartographer who recorded that he had compiled it from approximately 20 earlier source maps, some of which he described as dating from the time of Alexander the Great. The map depicted the coastlines of South America and West Africa with impressive accuracy for its era. It also depicted Antarctica. Antarctica was not officially discovered until 1820. That is not the most disturbing part. The southern continent, shown on the Piri Reis map, does not match Antarctica as it exists today, covered beneath miles of ice. It matches, with unsettling correspondence, the subglacial topography of Antarctica, the coastline hidden beneath the ice sheet, a geography that was not confirmed by modern seismic survey until the 1949 Byrd Antarctic expedition and subsequent studies compiled in 1958. Captain Lorenzo W. Burroughs, chief of the cartographic section of the United States Air Force, wrote formally to researcher Charles Hapgood in 1961, stating that the Antarctic coastline depicted was consistent with the subglacial topography revealed by those surveys. Mainstream cartographers offer a compelling counter-argument. What appears to be Antarctica may simply be a distorted representation of the southern tip of South America, a common error in maps of that period. This explanation is taken seriously by most scholars, and it may well be correct. But Piri Reis stated clearly that he was working from ancient source charts. If even one of those source charts accurately depicted an ice-free Antarctic coastline, someone surveyed that coastline during a period when our entire understanding of geological history says it was inaccessible. The Piri Reis map doesn't prove a lost civilization existed. It proves that someone, somewhere, knew something that by every account we have, they should not have known. Number 2. The collapse that nearly ended us. In August 2023, a study published in Science by researchers from China, Italy, and the United States revealed something hidden in the DNA of modern humans that had gone undetected until a new analytical method called FitCol made it visible. Approximately 900,000 years ago, the ancestral population of Homo sapiens collapsed to fewer than 1,280 breeding individuals. Not 1,280 people total. 1,280 individuals of reproductive age. For roughly 117,000 years, from approximately 930,000 to 813,000 years ago, a group smaller than the population of a small town was the entirety of our species on Earth. Dr. Haiping Li of the Chinese Academy of Sciences described it as the most extreme bottleneck ever identified in human evolution. The numbers are difficult to hold in the mind. Modern humans number 8 billion. At the nadir of this bottleneck, our entire species could have fit inside a single large stadium, with room to spare. An estimated 2/3 of all human genetic diversity was lost during those 117,000 years. The period corresponds to a major global climate shift known as the mid-Pleistocene transition, when ice ages became longer and more severe, and conditions across Africa and Eurasia deteriorated dramatically. What makes this finding particularly haunting is what it reveals about the fossil record from that same period. The bottleneck corresponds almost exactly to what paleoanthropologists had already noticed independently: a puzzling near absence of hominin fossils across Africa and Eurasia during those same centuries. The rocks from that era are almost silent. Almost no bones. Almost no tools. Almost no trace of our ancestors surviving at all. When a species falls to 1,280 individuals, everything they knew, every technique, every structure, every form of accumulated knowledge, falls with them. Whatever existed before, that collapse was reduced to almost nothing and rebuilt from scratch by the survivors who came after. Number 1. The 300,000-year question. In June 2017, a team led by Dr. Jean-Jacques Hublin of the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology published findings in Nature that rewrote the origin of our species in a single paper. Fossilized skull fragments recovered from a site called Jebel Irhoud in Morocco were dated using thermoluminescence analysis of associated flint artifacts. The result pushed the emergence of anatomically modern Homo sapiens back to approximately 315,000 years ago, extending our known existence by 100,000 years overnight. We had been wrong about when we became human by 1/3 of the entire timeline. That revision is significant, but the number it produced is the thing that refuses to leave quietly. 315,000 years. That is how long anatomically modern humans, with brains biologically identical to the one reading these words, have existed on this planet. Our earliest confirmed urban settlements, the proto-cities of Mesopotamia around ancient Uruk, date to approximately 3,500 BCE. That gives us roughly 5,500 years of what we call civilization, 5,500 years out of 315,000. That is less than 2% of the total time our species has existed. The remaining 98% is, in the archaeological record, largely silence. The standard explanation is that for the vast majority of our existence, we simply weren't cognitively or socially ready to build cities. But ochre, used for symbolic body decoration, has been recovered from Ngalue Cave in South Africa, dating to 164,000 years ago. Deliberately perforated shell beads, used as personal ornaments, have been found at sites in Israel and Algeria, dating to between 115,000 and 130,000 years ago. Abstract geometric engravings have been identified on tools predating these by tens of thousands of years further. The behavioral complexity was there. The symbolic thinking was there. Something else was missing, or something else was lost. Every item in this countdown points toward the same gap: a physical object with 1,400 years of missing technological predecessors. A map encoding geographical knowledge that should not exist. A catastrophic impact event capable of erasing centuries of human achievement in a geological instant. A genetic bottleneck that reduced our species to 1,280 survivors and stripped away 2/3 of everything we had accumulated. And beneath all of it, a timeline that gives anatomically modern humans 300,000 years of existence and accounts for almost none of it. 300,000 years of modern human existence, and we can only account for the last 5,000. The most disturbing possibility isn't that another species came before us. It's that we did, and we have almost no memory of it. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.